to be able to accept that and then gradually walk the path of coming to the viewpoint of God has somehow awakened within me a gift that I need to use for others if I possibly can.
What I know is that most of humanity and all of the individual people in each of the countries involved, what we really want is to just live in peace and enjoy our lives. I don't think that a majority of humans really go about their lives thinking about how much conflict and war they would like to be participating in.
Music saw through to the gold in her soul and the depth of experience. I was able to speak directly to it and allow her to be validated for the tragedy and the grief that she was going through.
Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda. I have with me my psychic friend, John Saxon. He's a piano psychic. Hi, John.
Hello.
For this conversation with psychic friends, I have a different kind of psychic. Oftentimes we think of a psychic reading as a person, receiving your divine truth through that clairvoyant space and communicating that to you. And John has a different approach. He's very clairaudient as well and a pianist. And so when John gives a reading, he is receiving your divine truth through that auditory channel and interpreting it through his music, through his live piano playing, and then communicating that to you afterwards too with an interpretation. So I love that. It's so unique.
Yes,
I love your
that
work.
describes it very well, Jean.
Yeah. So there's a lot of unique things about you, John, that I'd love to talk about. One thing also is that you are a Christian. And there's often, I think, in the world, this perception that you can't be both, right? That psychics aren't
Yes,
Christians and Christians aren't psychics.
that's
And so,
right.
yeah, I'd love for you to share how that has been for you in your life to really have both and to overcome some of those judgments or perceptions that those two things are in conflict.
Yes, well stated question. So I was raised in a very conservative Christian environment in which things like psychic perception or hands-on healing were
Mhm.
thought of as satanic and evil, and anybody who's doing this sort of thing is outside of the realm of God.
Yeah.
Now, you do have, of course, Pentecostal denominational kinds of Christians for
Yeah.
whom speaking in tongues and hands-on healing is within what is allowed. But for the
Yeah.
most part, in the kind of Christianity I was raised up with, it's
Yeah.
not good at all. And so going from that to being able to accept the little bits of intuitional knowledge that I had no business knowing and were inconsequential anyway, to be able to accept that and then gradually walk the path of coming to the viewpoint of God has somehow awakened within me a gift that I need to use for others if I possibly can. And despite the fact that it was counter to the Christianity that I started with, I eventually kept the Christianity and this attempt at ministry as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. And so you must have gone through quite a process of letting go of those judgments or those rules. Part of the dogma of certain religious structures is that, psychic means bad. You just don't even go there.
Yes.
Was that easy for you, or was there a difficult process of kind of finding your space with navigating through or letting go of some of those judgments or invalidations?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I am still in the process of letting go of all of the layers
Yeah.
that I was inculcated with as a child. Bit
Hmm.
by bit, they come off. And
Yeah.
as you let them go, then, and are able to become more aware of the programming, then
Hmm.
the psychic input that allows you to do good for others begins to arise. In my most recent set of dreams and journals, shall we say, I'm starting to be shown, for my own spiritual journey, the
Yeah.
fact that I still have so much unconsciously invested in righteousness and being right
Yes.
was given to me from the beginning. And even
Mhm.
if I was able to let go of the scripture is always right,
Mhm.
is still very much a mindset of you've got to be right, even if it doesn't have to do with the scripture. You might have let that go, but oh no, you've got, this, you still have this
Mm.
other programming.
Right.
And The intuition and the direct contact with someone's truth is a non-judgmental place. And thinking that you've got to be right, or if you're not right, that you're wrong, is a dichotomy that does not live well, shall we say, with being in a non-judgmental place about another person's deepest truth.
Yes.
So I'm still letting that go as I continue my journey and trying to help others out this way.
I love that. Yeah, that's such a great awareness that when you're tapping into your intuition, you can't be looking at anything through all those judgments, right?
Yes,
And the
that describes
judgments
really well.
or limit that intuitive space within you.
Mhm.
And yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the religious programming that's inadvertent, I don't think it's intentional, right? But there is a lot of that judgment. It can become a judgment, even if it didn't start that way, right? Jesus was not preaching judgment.
Mhm.
But the ego, right, the human ego kind of starts to turn things into those black and white either or judgments, and then we lose that intuitive space that is not coming from a divided place of judgment.
Right.
So yeah.
Coming to the place of being able to be in non-judgment. Sometimes it's called neutrality, but I like non-judgment as well, being able to be in a place of non-judgment. And I remember the first time that I was able to directly sense a person's truth and be able to speak to it. It felt so powerful and so connecting that I finally realized what I believe God was trying to lead me to and say, this is the gift that I've given you. We've put you in a place to where you're going to have to rebel in order to access it.
Great.
If I might, I'd like to describe a little bit more of my journey as a kid and gradually coming out of what's called fundamentalism. And this
Yeah.
has to do with another strange aspect of myself, and that is being really intellectual. Because you
Yes.
think of intuitives as being wild and woolly, and you've got the long hair and the braids and the tie-dye shirt and never paying your bills on time and stuff like that.
These are
That's
great
the
judgments.
stereotype, right?
This is definitely a caricature or stereotype of certain, yeah, types of intuitive.
So when I first started out in fundamentalist Christianity, I was such a fervent little boy, and I wanted to do right by others, and I wanted to do right by God. And I was given the Bible, and so I read it. I mean, really carefully, thoroughly, and I was led by a lot of teachers. And it wasn't long before I began to question. And
Mm.
wait a minute, that says that there, but then this says that over here, and trying things together because I had been taught that what you do is you take this Bible verse here, that's a piece of independent, contextual, free truth. And you can put it together with another one just like it and come up with a theorem. Now, that's
Mm.
kind of like software geometry. But my analytical mind that I started life with just loved that. And so I
Yeah.
was building truth in my assembled set of theorems.
Yes.
Of course, eventually you come to where, gosh, here's a contradiction. What am I going to do? My entire faith in God is built upon this scripture being perfect, and
Yeah.
I could not escape the conclusion that it was not. And so it was my intellect that hammered me enough to say, you're going to have to let go of some of this because now you've been able to demonstrate to yourself that what you have been taught is not quite true, John.
Sometimes the intellect says these two don't add up, right?
Three of
Yeah.
these things belong together, like
Yeah.
on Sesame Street. Now, that being said, I want to say, in defense of fundamentalist Christianity, that I have seen lives be changed for the better when they join a group for which there are very clear rules for how to live and behave.
Yeah.
I have also seen lives destroyed when they do exactly the same thing, joining a
Right.
group for which there are these clear rules that you need to follow.
Yeah.
And I believe that it really does depend upon what the individual needs at that time in their life. And the fundamentalist Christianity can be a great service, and it can be the death knell for someone spiritually as well. And it's much like anything else, like this, psychic path that you and I have talked about before, that we have this journey that we have been on. For some folks, it could be the death knell, and they shouldn't be on this particular
Yeah.
and so the equivalence, I guess, that I'm trying to draw is that both paths can be right and both paths can be wrong, depending upon the spiritual makeup of the soul of the individual and what it is that they need at that time in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think of that similarly with the military, and not to like correlate the two, but there's a similar energy of structure and discipline that happens in the military that some souls need at certain times, and that's perfectly correct for them. And for other souls, that's not. For other souls, they're needing to explore their own space of creating their own boundaries and their own structures. So same with that fundamentalist question. It has a similar kind of rigid energy that I'm correlating to the military. Obviously, it's very different, but in terms of the content of the energy, there's some similarities there, right? There's a very rigid form. There's very clear boundaries. It really keeps people on the straight and narrow.
Structure that you can hang on to.
Right. And that's perfectly correct for certain souls at certain times and not for others. Yeah, that's a really great awareness to share there, because it's not about it's right or wrong, right? There's nothing right or wrong about those structures, whether it's fundamental religion or the military. It's more about what is the correct time for each soul to experience that kind of structure and that kind of information. Yeah. We all come to where we need to be in our own timing. And then it's about learning to recognize when we're ready for a different thing. Because I think a lot of souls enter in, and like you said, you had that more fundamentalist religious experience at the beginning. And then at some point you recognize, okay, now I'm ready for something different. That doesn't mean you threw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Right.
But you created a different structure for yourself that included a lot more freedom and less judgment.
Right. Well, hopefully so. Not every change in worldview ends up being less judgmental, but you'd like to think so. Now, one other thing that I'd like to share about this is that when I finally decided that the inerrancy of Scripture was not something that my intellect could hold, I became an atheist because the primacy of Scripture was inextricably linked with the existence of God for me. And so if you dropped one, then the other one had to fall away.
Oh, so there was a little bit of throwing the baby out with the bathwater at first.
Yes, indeed. And what's really remarkable is that I ended up coming back into Christianity partly as a result of some of the Bible scriptures that our teacher, Michael Tamura, pointed out to us as being hints at the true nature of God, the true nature of reality, and so on. And so after our first class with him back in 2005, I want to say, 20 years ago now, I began going back and looking through all of the scriptures that I had memorized and still had a great deal of ready access to in the brain, and thought, oh, that's what they were talking about.
You were able to through that more intuitive space rather than just the intellect.
Right. So here's a great example. In the back of one of the epistles, throughout the body of the epistle, there's exhortations for this and exhortations for that. But then at the end, there's all the greetings. Please say hello to so-and-so and give so-and-so my best. And I heard that so-and-so is sick, and please go have brother so-and-so pray for them. And then here was the key thing, because the prayers of a righteous person availeth much. And that think, oh, well, isn't that wonderful wishful thinking? But God is a God of democracy, and every prayer is answered. And no matter how sinful or righteous a person is, God pays the same amount of attention to those prayers because God doesn't play favorites.
Ooh.
And that, of course, is an imposition of our first century American political way of thinking applied to God.
Interesting, yeah.
Then you put it with other scriptures like in the Beatitudes in Matthew, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
Yes.
Now, pure in heart is another way to say a righteous man, or gradual process of perfection of the soul, character perfection. And seeing God, okay, so this is the psychic bit. Okay, this was something that Michael shared with us.
Yes.
There's another one where the Apostle Paul is saying, I need to go to Jerusalem. The Holy Spirit keeps on telling me that all I'm going to see when I get there is death. But I know that I still have to go. This kind of moment by moment being in tune with Spirit that's talked about there was not taught to me at all as
Right.
a fundamentalist kid. But it's
Yeah.
little clues like that that start to give you an idea that what you were originally taught had some of the important parts left out, but that there's some baby there that you need to go and bring back and put back into the, drawing a new
Create
bath
some
and
new
all of that.
bathwater.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I came to the conclusion that so much of what I eventually learned in moving into this non judgmental space and being able to see and hear a person's truth and minister in this way actually was talked about in the Bible. I
Yeah.
just didn't have the tools, and neither did any of the adults around me, to understand that that's what was being talked about.
Right.
So wanted to make sure and relate those as a part of, I did indeed, go down into atheism before
Yeah. No,
before
that's
coming back up.
fascinating to
And
hear because I think that's very common, especially if you're still approaching it purely from the intellect. Because of course the intellect will say, well, these don't line up, 2 + 2 = 4, not 7.
yeah,
And so then you'd have to throw the whole thing out. But as you include that intuitive approach, a lot of the times, there's various scriptures that are speaking very symbolically or through various different interpretations. They've lost the intended meaning on an intellectual level, right? Because of the different interpretations, because maybe the way it was being interpreted was through some of it's flawed, humans are flawed. And so when you're reading it though through the intuitive mind, you're seeing what was that author really saying? Well, what is God really trying to say through this scripture? And you hear it in a different way and you get the bigger picture and you get to let go of some of the details that don't line up and really see the core of it, right? Really see the content. That is
yeah,
always love. Some of that love gets filtered out and missed in certain religious structures. And again, that's not to make them good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just it's serving a different purpose at the time. But it's
right.
all leading towards an awareness of love and lovingness. And we have an
So
opportunity to change the bathwater. So you brought the baby back.
yeah, brought the baby back.
I
So
love it.
when my wife and I were in my mid 20s, it wasn't until then that, after having thrown out the assumption of the absolute perfection of the scriptures that I was studying, a Christian context, not sure what to do. This is when the little bits of intuitive knowing start showing up. And they would be such small things. So my wife and I were in graduate school together, and I would have an intuition one morning that says, if you go really close to the close parking lot by the math building where your classes are, you'll find a parking space. Even though you don't usually ever find one and you have to park at the far lot and walk for 20 minutes, today you'll find one close.
Yeah.
And of course, being the intellectual analyst that I was, and I was in mathematics graduate school for crying out loud, I said to myself, go away. I'm not listening to you. You
You're
are
arguing with that
you're
intuitive
wrong.
voice.
Yes, I'm arguing with the intuitive voice.
Like, you're
And
wrong. That
so
never happens.
gentle prodding, right? The still small voice, you might say.
Yeah.
And so finally, one day I caved in. All right, fine. I'll go look for one up there. And it shows up.
Yeah.
So I began testing this out like a true scientist, right? I would say, okay, all right, I've got it. I received it at 8:36 a.m. for my 9 o'clock class. I'm getting in the car. I'm going to the close parking lot, and let's just see if it shows up. Now,
Yeah.
I can't say that it showed up every time, but I can say that about 85% of the time, a spot showed up in the lot when ordinarily it would never show up. That lot is chocked full by 7:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And so totally inconsequential, doesn't change anyone's life, but it's something that I had no business knowing that I knew, and it worked out. And I feel like now looking back that God was trying to take me ever so gently into the place to where my mind could accept what my soul was trying to grow into.
Yes. Yeah. I find that often it's those, what you're saying, inconsequential. It's like we get to practice with the things that maybe don't have so much weight on them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
where if you're quote wrong, it doesn't really matter. You just drive to the other
Yeah.
parking lot and get a parking space, and it's not going to harm anyone. But we get
Yeah.
to practice with those smaller opportunities or less consequential opportunities to follow our intuition, to build that trust and to build that validation and to build that rapport, right? With, it's really, you could say, Holy Spirit. It's the guidance that we're getting, that when it's something small like a parking space, we get to build that trust, right? Because it won't be the end of the world if you're, quote, wrong, or if,
Yeah. It's not
yeah.
like, okay, invest all of your life savings in stock number A, B, C, D, E. Yeah,
Right.
oh boy,
That might
I'll
not
get
be a
that
good
one right
practice
now.
arena. Right. When we practice with the inconsequential things, it really helps build that trust, so that when you have a more impactful life decision to make, you can trust that inner guidance. You can trust that voice of the Holy Spirit that's giving you those nudges.
One other thing I'd like to add on to this point is the inconsequential nature of the information
Mhm.
kind of gave me an idea as to what the calling of that kind of gift means. Because whenever the word psychic enters a conversation, things
Yeah.
about telling the future and where will I find my first love or my next love or whatever
Right.
are the assumptions that automatically come up.
Right.
And with the way that it is developed for me and the people that I've helped, they haven't been about where's my next man or woman going to come from.
Right.
It's been about helping them on to the next point in their spiritual path and what is good for them right now. And the music really does describe this. When that's the question they ask, the music really describes it. And we're able to talk about this.
Yeah.
And it's completely devoid of charlatanism and trying to take advantage.
Because it's not about telling the future. It's about
Yeah,
healing, right? And I know a
it's
lot of
about
folks are really
healing
interested and
in the
associate
here and
psychic
now.
with, right. It's about what is your next step right here, right now. What is it that you can let go of right now to bring about more wholeness? What about your past can you let go of to be
Yeah.
able to be
What
more
is it that
present?
you're not seeing? Is it not seeing that the music can elucidate for you and help you to see? And once you see it, then you can choose, all right, I can let go of this and
Yeah.
be in a better place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's about healing, letting go of what no longer supporting our wellness, letting go of fear.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a it's a great sort of myth buster, I find, to recognize that, psychic isn't about telling somebody's future. But a lot of people are interested in that, and that's where it comes from. And I find that the more attached we are to figuring out the future, really the more fear we're living in. It's like we're
Yeah.
needing to know what's going to happen because we're afraid, right? When we're not afraid, we let things unfold. We're not concerned about it. So I bring that into the conversation if someone's asking about a sort of a future question.
Yeah. Hmm.
I
Right.
always look at if there's any fear involved with that question. Sometimes it's just sort of a neutral curiosity or an interest in knowing what decision to make about things. Usually there's a
Hmm.
lot of fear involved when we're attached to a future outcome.
Future outcome.
Yeah.
So, in this context, I'm at church in Colorado Springs. We're attending a UCC church there, and I'm continuing to accumulate this. And I've been working in software development for about 10 years by this time. And so I'm continuing to accumulate little bits of experience on the intuitive side while I'm continuing to trumpet to myself my analytical side. And the web of experience and knowledge on the intuitive side continues growing bit by bit. And so finally, when I'm about 40, I decide, okay, I really need to nail this down. Why is this true? Because I couldn't understand why it was true, but it was true. I wanted to
Yeah.
know why this was true. And in my earnest searching, here's what happened. A small subgroup of psychics and healers that belonged to our church that I had previously had no knowledge of suddenly came into my circle of acquaintances.
Yeah.
And they began sharing a little bit with me, and somehow I was led into being affirmed by this group that doesn't let other folks in the church know about their existence for fear of scaring them off, right?
Secret psychics of the church.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. One of the older women in the church was my mentor for this whole process. And and gradually walking me along the path. She was the sexton who took care of the church facilities during the church day from 8 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon on Sundays. And then there were others might be engaged as a counselor or a psychiatrist who
Yeah.
also had a very well developed intuitive side and were able to harness that for
Yeah.
some of their church work. But it was all quite hush hush because of the stigmas, maybe not the right word, but the negative connotation that still exists in a lot of people's minds when they join a church.
Right.
So I was shepherded by this group from within the church. I was just amazed that
Wow.
there should be a source of this kind of mentorship and raising me, or I think of myself as a baby at that time with respect to the psychic and healing arts. I was just reaching out, and
Yeah.
this group in the church somehow heard me and welcomed me in, and I'm so grateful for that. And I was amazed that it came from within the church.
Yeah. You found your people. That's so
Yeah.
great.
And so
Yeah.
that was a part of what allowed me to continue to remain Christian and to think of Jesus as our healer, while at the same time embracing this gift that seemed to be arising,
Yeah.
that other folks had walked this path before who were Christian. So it was
Wonderful.
within that context then that one of that group who already knew that I was a pianist. I
Yeah.
had played special music for church, like you do, whenever they discover you're a pianist. Oh, you do this.
Yeah, if you're a pianist, you get to put the work at church.
You put the work, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of them said, I'm having a vision of what it is that you're supposed to do with your piano. If you're open to hearing this,
Wonderful.
I'm making recordings for other people, and that this is a recording of who they are as a person in piano music, kind of
Yes.
like in coding. And at the time, I thought, well, thank you for playing. We have a consolation prize for you in the back. Don't bother coming back to me again. My software career was going great guns. And I thought,
Yeah.
that's a little too deep for this intuitive business that I'm trying to figure out. And
So when
once
you
again,
first heard about this suggestion, you did not approve?
no, not at all.
That's
No,
great.
I thought that was nuts. It was a very gentle prodding. I kept on getting this feedback from different people in different places.
Yeah.
John, you seem like, I know what you need to be doing, and it would be the same story. And,
Right.
well,
Spirit speaking through
what?
many different people, and you're like, okay. So how many different messages did you get before
I'll
you?
try. Oh, I think like six different people independently.
Yeah.
There was the woman in my church. I went and got my first reading somewhere, and they talked about it.
Wow. Yeah.
I played the piano at a different church for special music, and someone came up to me after that
Yeah.
and talked about it. I took a class from a colleague of ours, Naomi Haree,
Yeah.
and she talked about it. And then there was someone else who lived in the Boulder area who I got a reading from, and she talked about it. So by this time, I'm thinking, all right, all right, all right. So my long-suffering wife, she was my guinea pig. I tried my very first reading out on her, and to my surprise, I was actually receiving music transmission. I could pick up some music up here. Well, I say up here in the head, but I was perceiving music. And so I tried to follow along on the piano as best I could, and I recorded it with the tape recorder. It was that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that long ago? Back when we recorded things on tape.
Yeah.
I remember those
Exactly.
days. Wonderful. So your wife offered to be your first readee.
Oh,
And then
God
it went
bless
on
his
from
soul.
there.
Yes. Then went on from there. And so it took me maybe a year and a half of trying this out with a number of guinea pig people before I decided, I think I'm ready to try this out somewhere for people that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I began at small metaphysical fairs in the Colorado Springs and Denver area,
Nice.
and I began giving piano readings. And so
you would do live readings for just whoever would come up and ask for one at a fair, like in a big fair type of setting. That's great.
yes, that's right. Some of the stories are so great. There was one young woman who came and wanted a piano reading, and she wanted something about finding a partner, okay, her romantic life. So I went through and played about 8 minutes of music, I think, that I channeled from her, right, directly
Yeah.
from her. And I then told her afterward, I said, okay, now you probably heard this, but now there were two very distinct melodies in this
Mhm.
music. And I could tell that the two of them were competing against each other. They were competing melodies in the music. And I said, does this make any sense? And she has this sheepish grin on her face. She says, well, actually, I'm dating two guys and I don't know which one to pick.
I love it. That's great. She's
Well,
like, yeah, I know what that means.
sure.
Wonderful.
So then, to follow on to that, some of the music had a lot of really muddy tones down in the bass that,
Mhm.
they weren't consonant at all. They weren't in any chords or anything. It was just mush. And I
Yeah.
said, "Well, that mush section, this is pointing to a desire by your soul to have a little more definition around who you would like to be, who you want to become, what kind
Yeah.
of person you want to be. And
Yeah.
then with that definition, it should become clear which one of those melodies or which one of those mint you would like to choose.
Yeah.
If choosing one is what you want to do. But all of that was made clear in the music, and I was able to interpret for her after the fact what it was that the music was saying, and it was very relevant to her situation. And she had such appreciation for what we were able to bring to the fore as a result of the piano.
Yes. Oh, it's such a fun way to read, John. I love it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it really speaks on that intuitive level to the person too. So you can interpret it, and have that dialogue that kind of makes sense of it, so to speak, but it's still
Mhm.
also speaking directly to the soul on that deeper level. So that's brilliant.
That's right. The music all by itself is healing, and I don't have to say a word.
Yeah.
But then I'm frequently given, okay, now you need to tell them about X, Y, and Z. And
Right.
so then I interpret the music for them in that way as well. But
Yeah.
on both counts, it's clarifying and deeply healing because of speaking directly to the soul without any words. The music just comes in and does its thing.
Yeah. That's that soul level communication. Soul doesn't need words, does it?
Mhm. It does
I
seem that
love
it always talks in some way other than words, like
Yeah.
you need to sell your house and move to Florida, right? There's
Right.
nothing like that. That never comes.
Right.
It's
Right.
always images, music. You
Yeah.
almost think like if the unconscious would just get its act together and tell me what I need to do, but that's not how it talks to
Yeah.
us.
No, it's very holistic. The
Yeah.
big picture and that information from spirit comes through, like you said, in images, definitely through music, because music is full of imagery, right? When we just listen to a piece of music, if we're really tuned in to our awareness on that imaginary level, we're seeing the images. It's creating a whole story. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. I love that. Do you have any other fun stories from fairs? I'm sure you've had a lot of really amazing experiences
Yeah.
at these
Well,
fairs.
I do have a couple of others that I can share.
I love
The kind of music that comes through is that which I've just described, in which, we interpret the music together with the person's life situation and we gradually put together the intent for the person listening and what their next step ought to be. But
Yeah.
there was one that just gave me goosebumps. It was so tremendously powerful.
Hmm.
A young couple, they weren't even married yet, but they were so in love. It was all over the both of them.
Yeah.
They wanted a piano reading about their relationship. And I frequently give, piano readings about relationships, married couple relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, and so on. Oh, I advertise on my website, pianoreadings.com, for your 20-year anniversary, a musical transcription of your relationship,
Oh, love it.
little marketing to try
Yeah.
and
No, that's great. I love that.
Um, so anyway, I was at a metaphysical fair. This was in Columbus, Ohio, and this couple came to me and wanted this piano reading of their relationship. So
Yeah.
I go into meditation. I get into soul contact with them, and the music begins coming to me, and I begin playing. And
Yeah.
so I'm playing. I'm wailing away on the piano, and I'm looking kind of over to the right and left, make sure that everybody is still okay while I'm playing. And the
Yeah.
guy's over here on the right, he's doing just fine. The woman over here on the left, she is in tears and is cannot contain herself. And so I
Mhm.
thought, okay, this is fine. This is fine. I don't need to rush over there and try to help. I can be in this non-judgmental space and just keep playing. And so after a few more minutes, the music finishes up. So the piano reading, according to the fella, thought, oh, well, this is kind of cool sounding, some different random sounds thrown in, some wonderful melodies. Yeah. So the young lady, she says, you have no business playing that music. She said, I wrote a song for my uncle when he was in hospice, and
Wow.
I played it just for him, and no one else knows this song. You just played that song on the
Wow.
piano.
Love it.
And I didn't know what to say. I thought, well, your uncle must have decided to show up and play through me because I thought I was playing y'all's music, and
Yeah.
obviously I was playing the song that you wrote for him.
Sounds like Uncle wanted to say hello.
He had obviously passed by this time, and
Yeah.
she missed so much. He was bread and butter and everything else to her, and she missed him a great deal. And for that song to show up and give her this boost of love that I could never have seen coming was marvelous. I was in the right place at the right time to deliver this message of love from her uncle who had passed, and I was buzzing for the whole rest of the fair.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so meaningful. And like you said, that's not something you can figure out.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
totally from the intuitive space of just following that guidance.
Was in transcribing that song.
Yeah. Wow. I love
That's
the
right.
creativity of her uncle's soul too.
Yeah.
He
Uh-huh.
was like, "Oh, I'm
Here's
going to say hello."
and you're gonna know that it was Uncle.
Mhm. Yeah, that's such great validation too. I mean, there's a whole realm of psychic practice called evidentiary psychics, evidentiary mediums. It's kind of a niche of psychic practice that people like James Van Prau and some other folks like that do, where it's kind of about demonstrating to maybe the doubters that there's something
Oh,
here, whether they're bringing through a specific piece of information that they definitely couldn't have known about, something really specific like your mom's favorite shirt, or
yeah.
and that's often called evidentiary psychic medium practices. So you did that through your music, not that wasn't your intention, but you were just tuning in and shared
Right.
something that for her, whether it helped on that level too, it might have also supported her in validating spirit, but certainly brought through so much love in that hello from her uncle.
Yes,
That's
most
beautiful.
definitely.
Such a
That
great
one
story.
is a beautiful story. Now, the other one that I could share is unfortunately a little bit more along the tragic end.
Oh yeah.
But when I began a piano reading for a college student, she was in her very early 20s, I think a junior in college. And
Mhm.
I began playing her piano reading for her. And I was taken directly to the second G above middle C and just
Mhm.
playing that over and over and over
Wow.
again.
Yeah.
60 seconds or so, just fixated right on that note. And then,
Hello.
little by little, the music said, okay, now it's time to deviate. Take the F sharp
Mhm.
below, take the G sharp above, but stay on the G. And it took
Mhm.
another minute or so before the music began to branch out from that one note. And the music began to sing this woe of separation and
Mhm.
being apart and lost love. And
Mhm.
there was not much variation
Mhm.
in this piano piece that I was channeling. Now, hers was a short piano reading that she had asked for, so only played about 5 minutes. So
Mhm.
those were the two major themes. And so I began describing this for her. I said, now the music is talking, first of all, about, and this was a part of the interpretation that I was given to say, a
Mhm.
grief point. There's a very strong grief point here on this
Mhm.
G, and you heard this.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
you were catatonic. You could not move. You could only put one foot in front of the other, and you were in shock. And only gradually were you able to come out of this.
Mhm.
Music that then followed talked about some kind of separation, someone that loved you or that you loved and they had to move away, or there was some reason for the separation. And the grief seems to be about this
Mhm.
about this particular person. So I'm going on and describing this and of course I'm in the next 30 seconds I'm going to come to the usual question. Now, does this resonate or is the music, off base here? She reaches out and grabs my hand and asks me to stop talking.
Oh,
And so we wait, and then she's able to come back and say, just 2 weeks ago, my best friend was caught in a drive-by shooting and she's gone.
yeah,
And so the music was able to validate for her the
yeah,
tragedy that she had gone through without me having to be a counselor and saying, okay, now you got to talk about this grief and you got to do this
yeah,
and you got to do that. The
yeah,
music saw through to the gold in her soul and the depth of experience that she wasn't going to share with just any old person. But because of the music and the ministry, I was able to speak directly to it and allow her to be validated for the tragedy and the grief that she was going through.
yeah.
That was also goosebumpy and pure magic.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and I wish that she had not had to have gone through that tragedy, of course. But given the circumstance, I was able to provide validation that she was seen and she
Yeah,
was not invisible, and
yeah,
that God saw her and the music saw her and spirit saw her.
yeah.
And I was so glad to be able to deliver that message through the music.
So beautiful, John. And too, and when you were describing the music, I could hear it. The tone of the grief, the frequency of it was coming through to help bring that out of her. So it validated that space within her to have her grief, to be able to let it go and give it space to be and,
Yes.
and be with it. Because that music really was vibrating at that space to say hello and recognize and, yeah, see her there. That's so beautiful. I love that. What a beautiful ministry.
Thanks.
And then you still do that?
Unfortunately,
You go to fairs and festivals and places where there's different booths and psychic practitioners and healing fairs and things?
yes, that's right. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was at a metaphysical fair up in Greenwood, which is about 20 minutes north of where I live here in central Indiana. And
Wonderful.
I set up my keyboard, my electronic keyboard, and 5 foot from one side to the other, and a chair for me and a chair for whoever I'm reading. And we have two headphones, one for me and one for the other, that we plug in so that
Yeah.
readers on the side of me aren't bothered. It's just a very quiet tap, tap, tap of the keys. They don't hear the music, just me and the readee hear the music.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to be there with everyone else in the space and then give readings like that.
I love that. So it's kind of a private reading.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
in the
is.
sense that not all the passersby are hearing the music. That's very
Yes.
special.
hmm All of
Very
those are short. You know how typically the fairs want you to do it. They want you to
right.
set up minutes or 30 minutes or something
Yeah.
like that.
You're doing a quick reading and then but sometimes you do longer pieces of music and longer readings?
Yes. If someone desires something longer with more depth and breadth, then I
Mhm.
have them in my studio here at home. That's where we're sitting here. My piano's right
Yeah,
there.
there it is. Hello.
And we do a much longer reading. We do a separate piano piece for each chakra. And so
Nice.
every area of life that each of the chakras govern
Mhm.
is talked about in the music at one point or another. And so everything that's going on in the person's life, whether they know about it or not, is described
Yeah.
in the music. And so those sessions typically last anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours.
Wow. That's amazing. Each chakra. What
And
fun
the
work,
other thing is I
John.
record those and upload them to YouTube.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of playing.
Yeah.
Those I actually record on my phone and upload to YouTube for them so that they can hear them anytime they want after as well.
Right. Because I would imagine with a lot of readings, people will get the recording and they might listen to it later or they might not. But I would imagine with a musical reading, there would be that much more interest in hearing it over and over again. Because it's just fun. And each time you hear it,
Yes.
it's healing. That's so great. So, John, would you like to share some of your music with us now? We had talked about a reading for a place, and since I'm in
Yes.
Oregon, I think you brought up the possibility of Crater Lake. That would be an amazing.
Yes, to do a piano reading of Crater Lake National Park. Yes,
Yeah.
I've visited there once, and so I know something about what it looks like and the
Yeah.
experience that I had there. But I have had requests in the past for me to do a piano reading for a place that a person loves the most, a
Yeah.
bird sanctuary in Western Ohio. Someone had me give a piano reading about that place that they love and have always visited. were a child.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to do a piano reading for Crater Lake.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. Crater Lake is a really special place, and I'm sure as you tune into the energy there, you'll bring through quite a bit of that energy in the music. Thank you, John. Yay! Thank you, John. Would you like to give us any other musical interpretations? How about something relative to what's going on in the world? We have, as we're making this recording, we've just been in the beginnings of a potential conflict in the Middle East where there's always ongoing conflict, but right now it looks like more of a global conflict potential. And I think as I look at that, what I know is that most of humanity and all of the individual people in each of the countries involved, what we really want is to just live in peace and enjoy our lives, right? I don't think that a majority of humans really go about their lives thinking about how much conflict and war they would like to be participating in. I think a general consensus amongst most humans is we would like to live lives of meaning and relative peace and just getting along as humanity. So I wonder if you could bring through a piece of music that speaks to our shared humanity.
That sounds good. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
like two
And
different ways of accessing information, and it doesn't have to be either or, right?
yeah, yeah.
It
Mhm.
can be both.
Yes,
But it's
exactly.
really important to get to know each of those and to really be able to discern, oh, this is information coming through my intellect, right? This is my reasoning self, this is my analytical side. And then, oh, this is my intuition speaking. So that you just have that information and that clarity and that discernment. But ultimately, you're making the decision. But you're able to access a broader range of information. And then when you know yourself well, and you know those two aspects of where you're getting information, right? The intuitive bit is coming from spirit, and the intellect is more the reasoning self and the analytical mind. But they're both
Yeah.
important, right? Because we have a body here.
This is hard fought information. It's not like this suddenly occurred to me. I shut my intuitive self down and brought it back up and shut it down and and um and each of them competing against each other because I had set them up in my mind as needing to compete. And finally figuring out that they don't need to compete took forever. And I keep beating myself up, which I shouldn't do, of course, but
I see it as coming from that information of the righteousness, right? The that part of the religious inheritance, so to speak, that is seeking righteousness, right? Makes
yes,
something right and something wrong. And so
doesn't
then
it?
it puts things against each other. If you've got intuition and intellect, well, one's right and one's wrong. So then you're in this like battle of trying to figure out, well, which one's right and which one's wrong, and it can only be either or. When really there's no right or wrong, it's information and accessing that connection with spirit. I kind of find it amusing if someone is really connected to spirit, whether it's through their religious beliefs or their spiritual practice. If they're really connected to spirit but making intuition wrong, that would seem like quite an internal conflict. And spirit's like, but that's how I speak to you.
Yeah.
How do we communicate with God without intuition? That's really the avenue. It's just a word. Intuition is just a word for describing that avenue of communicating with God. Yeah.
Yeah.
But somehow we kind of over intellectualize it and make it wrong or find those internal battles with it. But yeah, some of that just comes from the judgment and the fear
Well,
of
I
being
imagine
wrong.
with where you live in Oregon and being so close to nature that the intuitive would have a bit of a louder voice with all of the forests and all of nature around, and gradually starting to come to a sense that there's communication happening here with the trees and the plants and the animals.
So much.
Um,
Yeah.
on a spirit level. Whereas in a city, and I'm not in a big city here in Franklin, Indiana, but I've always been a city boy, and that
Yeah.
always is more devoid of nature than a forest is.
There are those of us who love to be near nature for that reason. Yeah, there's so much access to spirit coming through all the plants
Yeah.
and trees and the river. I spend a lot of time near the river. But just to know that you too, even in a city environment, you can always access spirit.
For those who might be curious, I thought I might describe a little bit more of my process for
Yeah,
giving a piano reading.
absolutely. Tell
Okay,
us all
sure.
about it, Tom.
When I first began with the piano readings, I thought that I would only be hearing with my inner ear or psychic ear or,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
And to be sure, music does start to play and I'm able to hear it in my mind. However, there are other sensory inputs that come in as well. One of them is visually. I actually am shown where my hands need to go
Yeah.
on the keyboard. And so I place them there, and then the movie begins to play. So, in addition to the music sounding here, what it looks like on the keyboard is also given to me. And so I'm following on to a movie visually as well as listening
Nice.
to what it should sound like. But then there's a third aspect. When my hands are on the keyboard, I don't have in my inner vision, I don't know whether it's a chord or an
Mhm.
arpeggio or a melody in one hand, chords in the left. That is given to be my kind of a little gentle thumping in my internal gut. So
Mm.
I
Yeah.
the arpeggio, I feel a da 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 da
Yeah.
in the gut, and so then I pair that with the vision, and so then I do the arpeggio with it. But then other
Mm.
times it's just all at once, a dun, and so then I play it as a chord. And so I've got these three inputs,
Yeah.
these three different senses coming on with the feeling, the vision, and the hearing, and I try to put them all together when I play. So it's fairly complete information coming at it from three sides. And so whenever I give a piano reading, it's an amalgamation of all of those together into what I hope is a single unified whole.
Yeah. I love that though, that you recognize the different channels, so to speak, of information, right? There's a feeling sense where you get maybe more of the rhythm or the, what did you call it? The way that it's being played out, right?
Right.
Whether
Uh-huh.
that's in the
Yeah.
rhythm or the
Sometimes
volume or
it's
the,
rhythm, sometimes a single chord. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, the energy of it. You can also see where the chords are, where your hands need to be, and you can hear it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is an ongoing
Totally.
process, as you might imagine. I've had some readings about my piano readings, from other readers, and say, now, John, you need to graduate to where instead of relying on these senses and trying to consciously figure it out, you just let your hands go and allow it to be
Mm.
completely autonomous. Let your hands just go.
Mm.
That doesn't happen for me very often. I'm
Yeah.
given to understand that that's sort of the next stage of giving piano readings,
Mm.
but I haven't been there very often. Every bit of this is an ongoing thing, and I can't ever say that I've arrived with giving piano readings.
Sure.
Um,
We're always learning.
but
Yeah.
we're always learning.
And
All of
growing.
that I'm conscious of now, I wasn't conscious of 5 years ago when I was doing this.
Yeah.
And so very gradually being able to differentiate these different pieces of inputs, that took a while. And for
Yeah.
anyone starting out, it's entirely natural for it to fall flat on its face sometimes and picking up very garbled transmissions in the beginning. And it's just a lot of practice, like getting good at anything else.
Yeah. And it looks like too, John, it's that process of letting go of the part of the intellect that wants to be either controlling or analyzing every step of the way. I think that's
Wants to
very
be
helpful
right.
for you in describing your work. I think there's a lot of intuitive that won't necessarily be able to describe the process. It's just like, well, I just know it. Right. But you're able to describe it in detail because that intellect is kind of interpreting and analyzing the process as you go. And yeah, it might be true that a next step for you is to let go of that intellect more, but I don't see it as a right or wrong. It's useful information for anybody wondering. Like, I think a lot of people wonder, like, well, how do you do that? And usually the answer might be, I just do. But you've got a lot of information
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
learning process for all of us as we go.
Yeah. For me, one of the processes that I have no idea how I do it is packing the trunk efficiently. Some people packers. I have no idea how I know what I'm supposed to put where, but it all
Yeah.
ends up being so much more in than we can get in the trunk.
Yeah. You've got an intuitive Tetris stacking
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Intuitive
ability.
Tetris skill.
It's true. That's one of those things. If you sat there and tried to figure it out, it would take forever. But the intuition is
Yeah.
much quicker with that kind of thing. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing with me today, with all of us here, John. Just such lovely work and beautiful ministry and support for people. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wanted to say the website, as I mentioned, is pianoreadings.com, and you can look up John Saxon piano readings in both Facebook and Instagram and on YouTube as well to get some samplings of different things that I've played. So feel
Yes,
free.
I'd love to hear sampling. Thank you, John, for letting us know the samples are available. I'd love to hear that. And thank you for offering the samples today as well.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Higher Vibe. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.